Hey everybody, Brian Zane here. I sure hope everyone had a good and safe holiday weekend, and I hope they enjoyed all the wrestling action that was taking place this past weekend. Not just, with the national companies, but whatever you may be experiencing on your local level. I know that POW Pro Wrestling was in Eugene this past Saturday night. We were at PK Park, where the Eugene Emeralds and the Oregon baseball team plays for the second ever Base Brawl event. We really had a lot of great rabid fans staying after the game on Saturday to watch our display at POW Pro Wrestling, and that was just a wild night for sure. Then, of course, there was King and Queen of the Ring in Saudi Arabia that same day, and also on Sunday, of course, was AEW's fifth installment of Double or Nothing. I can still vividly recall what it was like to be there 5 years ago in that same venue, the MGM Grand Garden Arena, for the very first Double or Nothing. I mean, it was such a cool experience to be there. Just a lot of really positive memories associated for me with that weekend. Not just the experience of being in the crowd at Double or Nothing, but also, the StarCast in the days leading up to it, and just the other festivities of enjoying Las Vegas. It was just a really special time, and my heart was definitely in Las Vegas on Sunday as Double or Nothing was happening here this past weekend. Let me give you a breakdown of how the show went, beginning with the International Championship match, Roderick Strong defending against the aerial assassin Will Ospreay. This is a match where it definitely felt like, oh, Will's definitely winning this one. There's no scenario I can think of where Roderick Strong would have walked away with the championship, but let's see where the journey takes us here. I know early on there's a lot of Matt Taven and Mike Bennett chicanery, and Ospreay is trying to take those guys out, and then later on Ospreay is hit with this crazy diving doomsday device where Taven, I love how Matt Taven hits the ropes and he's right in front of Bryce Remsburg's line of sight as he's doing it. The referee, though, commitment to the bit, Bryce does not look away and he just focuses on Strong as all the chicanery is happening. Taven hits the ropes, big dive, he clips the rope on his way out though, so kind of a scary fall for both Taven and Ospreay after that doomsday device there, but they are able to recover. Wardlow enters the ring, he goes to powerbomb, the referee catches him in time though. Ospreay with the big-ass sky twister press to the baddies on the outside. The Undisputed Kingdom is finally ejected after a good long while. Ospreay hurts his knee at one point during this matchup. That allows Strong to get a lot of his stuff in, all his backbreakers and knee-based offense, what have you. Near the end, Will hits his big Os cutter. He's thinking about what to do next. Don Callis, who by the way has been on commentary this whole time, he gets up and he gives Will advice. Take him out with the Tiger Driver 91. He's going to the hospital anyway. Hit him with the move that he just, that Ospreay made a big deal about saying he's retiring now. So now he's conflicted. Is he going to do it? He even holds Strong up. He's going to hit him with the move, but ultimately he doesn't do it. Strong countering, end of heartache, hits the hidden blade, the Stormbreaker. Ospreay wins, is the new champion. I love Don Callis screaming, "We won!" on commentary. I'm going to give it 4 stars out of 5. This was definitely, again, foregone conclusion as to who was going to win this thing. But I think after they recovered from that scary doomsday device spot early in the match, they really recovered and gave us a very fun opener. After that match, though, the leader of the Undisputed Kingdom, Adam Cole, appears. Of course, it was last month at Dynasty. He got up from the wheelchair for the first time. He is healed, or he's healing at least. And he's here tonight. He immediately solidifies how much of a heel he is by mispronouncing the name of the state. It's Nevada, not Nevada. Anyway, he produces the devil mask, and suddenly this big MJF chant starts drowning out Cole. He's about to do his pose. The lights go out, and we get a video. It's a first person of someone going into a big MJF tribute room. The video cuts out, then MJF is here. Holy shit, Maxwell Jacob Friedman coming back for the first time since December, wearing the Triple H return jacket from 2002. Big holy shit chant as Cole wants a hug. MJF stalls, gives the hug, then takes Adam to Dick Kick City, hits him with a brainbuster too, firing the first shot since the betrayal late last year. MJF, who looks in great shape by the way, he's on the mic now and tells Cole that after what happened between them, he's never trusting anyone again. He says that unlike the schmucks in the back, he doesn't need New Japan or a Vince McMahon to become a star, and at the mention of Vince McMahon's name gets this massive pop. And so MJF basically reiterating, no more ha-ha comedy stuff, no more kangaroo kicks, no more bullshit. He's all about hate, hate, hate. He even calls the devil mask stupid and tells it to go to hell, dropping the elbow on it. Man, how many more Evolution members can one man reference? He addresses questions of his contract status by revealing a tattoo on the back of his leg, bet on yourself, with an AEW chip in the middle, and says he's not fucking leaving. So MJF is back, and the crowd was definitely alive for it. Time will tell how much of a full-blown heel MJF is going to get, because the whole he's our scumbag thing, it's a lovable heel is what we got by the end of the year, and that's what we got at this return as well. I mean, he didn't say anything outwardly heelish to the fans, except for calling them marks and then saying no offense, like pulling it back, being smarmy, being a bit snarky, but still being serious and being fired up. I think this was an interesting return promo for MJF, because you don't know where he's going to lean. He could be a face, could be a heel. There's certainly a lot of mileage, I think, to be gained from a kind of serious babyface MJF, but they also could just go back to what worked the last time and make him a really devious, evil heel. So I think it's really wide open. I think people are obviously excited, and seeing MJF address those rumors about his contract with the tattoo, literal skin in the game, I thought that was quite a bold choice, but I think it really shows how dedicated MJF is to sticking around and seeing this character through. The Death Triangle is back together in the ring for the first time since last January, and they are challenging the Bang Bang Gang, that is Jay White and the Gun Brothers, for the Unified Trios Championships. I love how on the Go Home Dynamite, when you saw Phoenix and Pac and Penta all together, everyone's like, oh my God, Phoenix was just gone for a few weeks. Now he looks jacked and huge and everything. Like, it's amazing what lighting will do, because all it was a spotlight from the top, and of course he's going to look like well more defined with the light from that angle. But I thought that was so funny, because he looks pretty much the same to me from when he was last on TV. Also, I see the tights the Guns are wearing, and I think banana cream pie. Anyone else? One of my favorite spots is Penta going 3/4 the distance of the ring to kick Austin Gunn in the taint, followed up by a tandem dive from the brothers. Pac is shaken up by a DDT, and the heels take advantage. Pac gets the tag out. I love the sight of Phoenix falling off Penta's shoulders, and the highlight after that was Taz on commentary saying, me and Spike Dudley did that once in training. Like, oh man, what a throwback to that often forgotten tag team of the tag team champions, Taz and Spike Dudley. Good Lord, the welt on Pac's chest here. Everyone getting their shit in. Pac goes on a big run and goes to the top rope. Suddenly, Juice Robinson with the well-timed return, the timely interference, allowing the Bang Bang Gang to retain Tang Gang. I'm going to give this one 3.5 stars out of 5. There was some fun, fast-paced action, which you come to expect from the Death Triangle. Really cool to see them back here. Love seeing Juice Robinson come back. I mean, that dude is the secret sauce to what made what was originally called Bullet Club Gold so much fun, was his kind of wild, loose cannon energy. And I think that's going to be a great pairing back with Jay White, with the Guns. I think that is just a really talented, entertaining foursome to watch, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where Juice goes now that he's healthy and he's back. For the AEW Women's Championship, Timeless Toni Storm defends against Serena Deeb, who's back in action and back in title contention after she was on the shelf for a very long time. She said in that promo a couple of weeks ago, dealing with seizures, which is really scary stuff. Glad to hear that she is doing better. And so yeah, she has worked her way back into title contention here. And the big story in this matchup for me, aside from just what is happening with the nuts and bolts in the ring, is that the crowd is definitely pro Toni. It's always kind of been that way for the last several months, but this feels like not only is the crowd very much on Toni Storm's side, more so than usual, but also the booking of the match, the structure of the match, definitely made it where, like, if it's not Toni being a tweener, she's definitely playing like a babyface in this matchup. And also the commentary was also kind of leaning into it as well and giving more kind of a sympathetic tilt to their commentary about Toni. Not necessarily healing up on Deeb, but definitely trying to make Toni more sympathetic, which I think is a really nice change of pace and just the gradual shift to that. I also love how, like, the biggest heat that Toni even got in this thing is kind of the biggest, like, nyah to Serena in the build to this is like she got naked behind the Deeb's Dojo flag and wrapped herself up in it. Side note, I actually was at that taping because I was in Portland on that night. And yes, what they say is true. Your world does turn black and white once Toni Storm enters the room. It's a really subtle thing, but one of my favorite things early on here was this little counter Serena did out of the corner with her legs. Deeb starts to attack the champion, Storm biting her way to a rope break at one point. Even when Deeb's making her big babyface comeback, the crowd is still overwhelmingly chanting for Toni here. She's got Toni in the half crab, and there's this moment on the outside where Luther and Mariah May are arguing over throwing in the towel for Toni in this moment, because Toni threw it in for Mariah with the same hold, and so then you get this moment where Mariah kind of passes the buck to Luther. Luther's caught holding the towel, and Storm, who gets out on her own power with a rope break, gets mad at Luther for insinuating the towel stuff. Deeb baiting Storm in with a double deuce but can't capitalize. We get Detox on the apron, another one in the ring. Toni kicks out. Toni wins by hitting a second rope Storm Zero, then a regular type for the win. She retains the title here. I give it 4 stars out of 5. I loved the physicality with these two here. It was a great chemistry, a great meshing of styles of these two. And again, for a match where you can kind of see what story they're starting to tell and how the narrative is turning for Toni Storm, they still deliver that in a really good way where it doesn't feel, when you look at the action, doesn't feel like confusing or ambiguous. They both kind of play it relatively straight. Toni is playing a bit more babyface by not having to rely on Luther or Mariah May so much, and we're just getting more wrinkles in that Mariah May storyline. What's her deal? What are her motivations? And where is that all going to go? Yeah, but they've been fighting it for a long time, it seems. They were kind of, it felt like they were drag kicking and screaming about making Toni a babyface. I've been talking about this for months, and now they're finally seeming to, the booking seems to align with this. Well, the best friends are no more. It was a few weeks ago that Trent Baretta turned heel, betraying Orange Cassidy and Chuck Taylor. He and Chucky T had a parking lot brawl a couple of weeks ago, and that seemingly is Chuck Taylor's final match. They announced on TV, and they've said multiple times, he's done wrestling ever again. There have been reports that he's been dealing with this ankle injury for a long time, and it's not getting better. So he's calling it quits, evidently, and that sucks, because I think I would have loved to have seen the best friends hold the tag titles at least once, while they were in AEW. I think it's kind of a criminal act that they didn't get that time to shine. But we are going to have Trent challenging Orange now here to a straight-up wrestling matchup. And Orange is serious here, because not only does he come back out to Where Is My Mind by the Pixies, he also comes out to dark denim, and he's got a black t-shirt on for the first time. It's blood orange. It's a big fist fight for much of the early going, fighting in the ring, out of the ring. Trent attacks Orange's throat, hits a lot of suplexes in this thing, but Orange stays willfully strong and defiant and putting the hands in the pockets. Stun Dog Millionaire blocked twice by Trent. We get a strong zero and a kick out. We get a beach break and a kick out. Trent with this Go-Go Plata hold, but Orange is able to counter it into a cover and the pin, beats him clean as a whistle in this straight-up wrestling match, and Baretta is beside himself as he walks to the back. Rocky Romero is trying to comfort him. Renee Paquette wants a word, but Trent says he's done. He wants none of it. I give it 3 stars out of 5. The match was just fine, but you know what? There's a lot of great matches on this show, and so just fine to me feels like the baseline. That's kind of where this match was for me. I love the idea of Trent Baretta as a singles guy. I've wanted that for a long time. I can still remember when Roppongi Vice split up and Rocky Romero gave him the blessing, go and be a singles star. And that lasted for, I don't know, a month maybe, and then he went right back to tags. He's been doing that pretty much ever since, and even when he had the small smattering of singles matches on Dynamite over the years, and they were great, I'm like, why don't they expand on this and just let Trent be a singles guy? And now that he's saying he's done, who knows what his fate will be in AEW, but he apparently take a little break, it sounds like, based on that reaction. I'd love to see more Trent as a singles star. We'll have to see if we get it. Well, it was last month at Dynasty when Chris Jericho was nearly booed out of the building during his FTW title match with Hook, with a chance of please retire, go home Jericho, and it seemed like kind of a low point for the Jericho stock in AEW. I even said you got to give this guy a break because it's too overexposed, too oversaturated. But instead, Jericho has pivoted once again and has kind of reinvented himself, so to speak. Now he is the learning tree, and now he seems to be fully leaning in to the negative perception about him as a veteran and kind of leaning into the idea of this very pompous veteran who feels that he is, the best person in the room, and he's very full of himself. And it's just very much, he leans into it. He's got the cheesy fake laugh when he's trying to be friendly with everybody. And I think, it's working for him. I think, again, leaning into the criticism, leaning into the boos, retiring Judas for the time being, which I think is a smart move because, no one's really singing along to his songs as much anymore. And it's not as cool, evidently. So it was just very bland work Jericho was doing for the last several months of his run. I'm not saying that the learning tree is a huge step in the right direction or a complete 180 from what it was doing, but I think it's taking advantage of an interesting temperature about the character and just kind of like turning it on its ear a bit. Kind of similar to what the Young Bucks have done recently with their EVP characters as well. But I think that it works more for Jericho at this point to lean into the, self-interested heel who thinks he's a face kind of gimmick than somebody who's trying to be a face and it ends up being kind of booed by accident. That being said, I give it about 6 months before he changes the gimmick again. Either way, he's defending his For the World Championship on this night against the former FTW champ Hook and Katsuyori Shibata. Early on, Hook brings out a table and they tease this moment where Shibata is going to knock Jericho and Hook off the apron and through the table, but it does not happen. Jericho ends up pulling out this big bag of dice and dumping it all over the ring, very much in line with the Las Vegas theme. And then the next several minutes of this match is just, hey, you take a bump into these dice. Now you take a bump into these dice. Everyone's just bumping into these dice over and over again. I felt it was kind of silly they went to the dice like this early in the matchup and then had to do another 7 or 8 minutes of wrestling with all these dice all over the place. That could not have felt good. Scary moment in this one where Shibata hits Hook with a Death Valley driver off the second rope onto Chris Jericho, who's on a table, and the table doesn't break, and the landing is just a bit scary here. Luckily, no one seemed to be hurt. Hook locks in the red drum on Jericho, but Big Bill shows up to make the save for Chris. Hook suplexing Bill off the apron and through the table on the outside. My God, Bill nearly impaled by that table leg. Shibata counters the walls of Jericho with a figure 4. Hook getting red drum on at the same time, but in comes somebody else to break it up. It's Brian Keith in a Sonico mask. The Judas effect on Hook. He covers Shibata. Jericho wins and retains. I give it 2.5 stars out of 5. There were some entertaining moments in this thing, like the first couple of bumps you saw on the dice were entertaining, and then it just became like a match full of those, and it got kind of boring. The stuff with the kendo sticks they did, with Jericho getting double teamed by the other two was funny. There were some fun chills and spills in this one. The twist of Brian Keith being kind of called in at the end. I know they mentioned that there was some kind of exchange between Jericho and Keith, and of course Brian Keith is the bounty hunter, so I don't know if he's going to join the learning tree or if he's just collecting a bounty to do this dirty work for Jericho or not. But I hope that they don't just kind of end it here for the Brian Keith Chris Jericho relationship. The Jericho vortex, as Jericho has now kind of taken that phrase for his own, it's got a mixed success rate when he aligns himself with younger talent, but I really like Brian Keith's work. I can only hope that it helps him. It's more exposure to be on the show with Jericho, where he's on Dynamite all the time, than say ROH, where I know he spent a lot of his time and doesn't get as big an audience. But I think that this is going to be, hopefully a step in the right direction for Keith, and we'll see how much more mileage this learning tree gimmick has before the wheels fall off or it's not entertaining anymore. But Jericho seems to keep finding ways to bounce back. God bless him. IWGP Championship Eliminator match up next as John Moxley takes on the Don Callis family's Konosuke Takeshita. And if my eyes did not deceive me, I believe Moxley was wearing the same vest that he wore 5 years ago at the first Double or Nothing when he made his debut. Again, all the feels. His arm is heavily taped up and bandaged here going into it, and of course it is a target from the get-go. Takeshita going for Moxley's fingers at the first point, but eventually works his way up. Sickening looking arm bump on the ring apron for Moxley, by the way. Also, at first I thought Moxley had a big wound on his back, and never mind, that's just confetti from the women's title match. Takeshita showing off a lot of sick strength in this matchup here. Moxley pulling a cutter out of nowhere. When does he do that move? Takeshita working the arms some more, showing more of the strength. The guys are trading blows for a long time, but Takeshita's are just a bit stronger. Hits Moxley with his own Death Rider move, still not enough. Don Callis then is once again at ringside here, and he tells Takeshita to kill him, to put Moxley out of his misery. And so he's got these chairs he's bringing into the ring, is Takeshita. He goes in there and he walks right into a stomp from Moxley onto the chair. A Death Rider of his own. Moxley wins this one. I'm going to give it 4 stars out of 5. This was just a smash mouth, hard-hitting matchup here. I love the versatility of Takeshita because he is very strong. He hits it real hard looking, but he's also very agile, and I think that's a great combination. And Moxley is looking more grizzled and tough than he normally does here, but boy, he looked really strong in this match as well. It's a kind of match where I know a lot of people were kind of saying, oh, wouldn't it be nice? It's non-title. Give Takeshita a win. I agree. I think that would have been really cool, but then you got to take into account the politics of New Japan, and there's no way they're going to put the belt on Moxley and then have him lose a match, ahead of Dominion, when he's got another title match coming up. I get it, it's a tricky balance, and it would have been cool for Takeshita to get that win and just have something going for him, because I felt like it's been kind of stagnant since that initial kind of burst last year when he had his matches with Kenny Omega. But it is what it is, and we'll see where it goes with that. Interesting little thread that I forget who pointed out, I saw on Twitter, but it's a very good point. Do you notice the fact that Will Ospreay didn't listen to Don Callis and he won his match? Takeshita did listen to Don Callis and lost. Makes you think. Adam Copeland defends his TNT championship in a barbed wire steel cage match against Malakai Black, and Adam says he will bend the knee to Black if he loses here. But boy, the things have gotten really heated in this rivalry over the last several weeks as Black continues to try to push Copeland to the dark side or to convert him to Malakai Black's house, so to speak. He steals Adam Copeland's wedding ring. Copeland responds by dumping gallons of raspberry jam all over him, and that bloodbath, that was a thick blood they used. Man, that was like, ugh, it made me want to take a shower after watching that stuff. It looked gross. But yeah, we're getting Brood Copeland here tonight. He even comes out with the Brood on his screen, comes out to Slayer as he's making his way to the ring here. Comes with the fiery elevator entrance as well. Copeland bloodies Black early on with some barbed wire from the cage. Tit for tat a couple of minutes later, Adams dropped face first onto the barbed wire. Now he is bloody. There's a barbed wire bat that comes into play. Both men use that. We get this big sunset flip powerbomb through a table in the ring by Black. What happens next is Copeland puts Malakai on a table, wraps barbed wire around the whole thing, goes to the top of the cage, jumps off the top, and this has to be the ultimate flying nothing into a flying something I've ever seen, because he just comes down presumably for an elbow drop, but he just lands right on his feet. Just like feet first, elbow barely dinking Black on that come down there. But boy, I just had massive visions of Macho Man, Halloween Havoc 97, jumping off that giant cage and like tearing his ACL. He was never the same after that. And like that's all I thought about when Copeland came down the way he did. So that happens. Copeland is kicked through the cage door, but escape is not a way to win, so it doesn't really matter. They're laid out on the outside. Out come Brody King and Buddy Matthews. Suddenly it looks as if they're taking Copeland's side, but psych, 'tis a ruse. Man, I bit hard on that one. There's a barbed wire crown for Copeland as the House of Black continued the beating. Then all of a sudden we get the red lighting, the whispers, Gangrel pops up through the canvas. Fuck yes. He hits some DDTs, he takes the end. Now Copeland gets the crossface on Black with the barbed wire assist to win and retain the championship. I'm gonna give this one 5 stars. You know why? Because of Gangrel, baby, the Vampire Warrior. Oh man, it was so cool to see him. What a twist. What a couple of twists in this matchup, in fact. The whole thing with Brody and Buddy seemingly siding with Copeland, but not, was also a really big moment. But yeah, Gangrel being in there just instantly up the match to 5 stars for me. It boggles my mind that like a similar opportunity presented itself when Edge was in WWE and like the company refused to do it because, oh, no one's gonna know who Gangrel is. Now go out there and beat Finn Balor, Brood Edge. Backstage, Lexi Nair interviews Don Callis. They recap all he's been up to tonight. Don's got a scoop and announces he'll be presenting a Don Callis family contract to someone, likely Orange Cassidy, on Wednesday. For the TBS Championship, Willow Nightingale defends against Mercedes Mone, the former Sasha Banks, making her in-ring debut for AEW. Of course, it was a couple of months ago in Boston that Mone made her official on-screen debut, to a lot of hype, a lot of expectations, a lot of piped-in CEO chants, and immediately positioned as the #1 contender for the TBS title. And then Willow wins it in a great moment in Dynasty. And I'll say, if nothing else is to be gained from this storyline, this program, one thing you can take away from this is that they have turned Willow into a star. And I think, it's not just them turning Willow into a star. Willow is showing how much of a star she is. She is just like one of the best pure baby faces out there right now. A hell of a promo, like week after week in this build. Her promos toward Mercedes and everything have just been really, really good. Really solid work. She is such a good, fun character to get behind. Like, she's one of the top baby faces, one of the top stars in the company in just a short amount of time, in a couple of months, the way they've built her up. And even more than that, probably 3 or 4 or 5 months now. But it's been such a great ride and great ascent to see her get in that position. And so if nothing else is taken away from this program, whatever you think of Mercedes Mone or whatever, or the fact that she's in the title match so soon, it's the fact that, man, Willow Nightingale's a star. Mercedes is led to the ring by a neon drum line and some Vegas showgirls. Willow makes her entrance as Chris Statlander and Stokely Hathaway come out holding a giant friendship bracelet for her. The crowd is really hot for this matchup. They have really come alive here at this part of the show. They're cheering Mercedes, but they're really cheering for Willow in this one. So I don't think there is much of like a face-heel dynamic. Mercedes has not really been acting like a babyface in these promos that she's been cutting. It seems designed to, like, they want the fans to boo Mercedes and cheer Willow, but we don't get that so much here in Vegas. Willow with a full head of steam starting things off, hitting a nice doctor bomb to Mone on the apron. When Mone does recover though, she's just flying all over the place, like spinning circles around Willow at times. There's some really great back and forth in this matchup here, and both ladies get a chance to really show what their strengths are in this matchup here. Willow getting to show off the strength and the power, and Sasha is very quick, very elusive at times, with some good evasive maneuvers. The way she kind of takes the air in the meteors looks pretty intense. A very painful looking spot at one point where Willow drops Mercedes shin first onto the apron. That looks like it could have sucked. Willow hitting the gut wrench powerbomb. She's got it won, but Statlander and Stokely end up keeping her from winning by mistake. Mercedes comes back, hits the Mone maker, and wins her first match in AEW to become the new champion. After the match, looks like Chris stands up to Stokely for berating Willow, but psych, it's a heel turn by Statlander. No! I give it 4 stars out of 5. I think this was a really entertaining matchup here. Willow stepping up in a big way against one of the biggest and most heralded female wrestlers of our generation, and I think they delivered a really good matchup. And I know there's going to be people out there who disagree with the way Mone has been portrayed and booked and immediately given this championship in her first match and whatever. But here's the thing, I don't think the impact of her winning the belt would have been as big if they didn't also build Willow up as well as they had. That's something I have to keep going back to. This win for Mercedes wouldn't have mattered as much and wouldn't have felt as big as it was if it wasn't for how well Willow was booked in this brief time she was champion. Even though it was clear from the beginning she is a sacrificial lamb in this whole setup for Mone, I think they still turned her into a very credible opponent. They turned her into this big babyface star, and I really hope they can do something with that going forth. You hate to see her and Chris Statlander get broken up, but I think I'm curious to see where that feud goes as well. As far as Mone as the TBS champion, it seems like it's a win-win for AEW because they bring her in with all this hype and this pomp and circumstance. She does have crossover appeal. She is known from being in the other company, so it is kind of a boon to AEW to have Mercedes be the face of TBS or whatever. I think it'll be interesting to see how she is handled and booked as a champion going forward. Speaking of how they book champions, let's talk about the AEW World Championship match up next as Swerve Strickland defends against Christian Cage, the battle of the alliterative names. Ever since the Dynamite After Dynasty, people have been ranting up and down about how poorly Swerve has been booked as world champion because he had the audacity as his first act as champion to wrestle a competitive match against somebody who's not exactly a world title contender instead of having some kind of, coming out party congratulatory promo as his first thing. And I get that. I totally understand. Like, you want the world champion no matter who it is, but when they win a championship, you kind of want a place like, let's give this guy a victory lap, let's do a thing. And so, yeah, that was kind of a misstep, I think, but also you build it up as Swerve is a fighting champion. He's a wrestler's champion. He goes out there and he wrestles because this is where the best wrestle, according to the tagline and everything. And also, let's not pretend that Swerve is the first world champion to not be booked as the most significant thing on the show at any given time. Like, even when MJF was world champion, he wasn't always the top story. And in Swerve's case here, it is kind of taking a backseat to the Elite at the moment, but he has also kind of established himself as somewhat of an enemy of the Elites because he talks trash about them as well. And it's certainly not the first time a world champion in any company has been treated like that. And I know we all kind of idealize the concept of the world champion being the most important thing all the time, no matter where it is. But, that doesn't happen in WWE either. It doesn't happen anywhere. Sometimes the world champion takes a backseat to something else that's a bit more important or a bit more interesting or captivating in a main event spot that week. And it's happened to my favorites. It's happened to your favorites. That's the way it is in wrestling, it would seem. I don't think that they're dropping the ball with Swerve as champion. Like, there were some things that were kind of like questionable early on, but then kind of got recovered later on. Here's the thing. The only thing that I had a problem with in the booking of Swerve from when he won the title to here on this show was when they wrote Prince Nana off for a while. And here's why. Because that is a very entertaining tandem. I think they really complement each other. I would argue that Prince Nana doing his dance is a very big part of Swerve's success. And I feel that, they're not going to break him up anytime soon. But when they did take him off, and also I think that the way he came back on the Go Home show, like helping for Swerve to get his revenge on Christian that week, I thought that was a really cool move. And that, him being gone for a few weeks kind of allowed that moment to happen. But here's the thing, that even if they're not going to break up Nana and Swerve yet, I had this sinking feeling that was them testing the waters for, can we get away with breaking these two up? Can Swerve be out on his own and stuff? Because I think inevitably, whether he's the champion or not by that point, it will happen. And it's sad, but that's just kind of how my prediction about it. But I think it's been a really strong angle with Christian Cage and the patriarchy, the role reversal with Swerve and Nick Wayne, and the breaking of the picture above his head and everything from what Swerve did to Nick last year. I think it's a really nice touch. I think it's been a perfectly fine first title program. And anyone who's saying the sky's falling, Swerve's been ruined or whatever, people, it's only been a damn month. Nana comes out with a bottle saying, "Swerve, come out and play." And then Swerve wearing the Warriors-inspired gear is everything to me. I'm a big mark for the Warriors movie, big mark for the PS2 game as well. So yeah, man, sign me up. Swerve in the Warriors attire, loved it. Swerve is firmly in control to start things off, but goes for a flying nothing to the outside, lands right into the barricade. We get a big honkin' tornado DDT by Cage and a frog splash right after. I love the big power slam Swerve hits out of nowhere. Then we get some turtleneck-based humor. Taz making a reference that Christian looks like Kenny from South Park, but then Shivani one-ups him and says he reminds him of Cornholio. Mama Wayne gets involved, but Prince Nana intervenes, but only Nana is ejected. We get Kill Switch and Nick Wayne beating the heck out of Swerve on the outside. Swerve makes a big comeback, but walks right into a spear. Finally, the rest of the patriarchy is ejected, so it's one-on-one. The steel stairs are on the outside. Swerve avoids getting powerbombed onto them and hits the nastiest stomp on Christian's chest. Nick Wayne with a cutter out of nowhere when the referee's distracted. Christian hits the kill switch, but Swerve kicks out. Nana chasing Nick out with a big-ass lead pipe. Cage and Swerve fight on the Spanish announce table. Swerve hits his stomp on the table, and it's a strong move, but I love the fact that table does not give an inch when he does it, when just this past week on Dynamite, Sanjay Dutt barely touched the announce table, and it turned to dust. Swerve hits the ropes. Cage goes for a spear, but Swerve hits the house call in midair, the Swerve stomp off the top, the house call, the cover and the win, Swerve retains. I give it 4.5 stars out of 5. This match was so good. You know, it proves why Swerve is in the position he is as the top guy in AEW right now. It proves why Christian is as good as everyone says he is, and says, you know, when Tony Khan says how much of an MVP Christian has been for the company, matches like this are why, because he is so good, he is so smooth. And I think these two had great back and forth, great chemistry. It was a really good story told, just more of an extension of the patriarchy getting involved, Nana making the save and all that stuff. I think it was just a really good matchup. And again, for a first title program for Swerve, this is a pretty darn good one. Main event time, it's the Anarchy in the Arena matchup as the Elite, that's the Young Bucks, Kazuchika Okada and Jack Perry, take on Team AEW. That's Bryan Danielson, FTR, and Darby Allin, who's filling in for an injured Eddie Kingston, but Darby himself is also injured because not only was he recovering from the broken foot that kept him from going to Everest this year, but also he got hit in the face by a moving bus. Somehow, Darby Allin is still in a good enough position to actually be in this matchup here, and he's got a flamethrower now. P.S. That's some based on what we saw in Dynamite. It's a little seed planting for the matchup here. Jack Perry, you know, I think I talked about this a little bit in the Dynasty review. Him being back and being part of this new Elite, I think the way they went about to reintroducing him, kind of showing where he went. Why has he been gone? Well, the CM Punk, you know, all-in brawl footage or whatever shows you a little bit of that. And so, you know, the debating of was that footage necessary to show? For the telling of the story they chose with Jack Perry, yes it is, I think. And so him being very justified, being very anti-Tony Khan and all that, their attacks on Tony Khan and the other executives and everything, just the whole story of the Bucks and the Elite having this kind of like diplomatic immunity, ironclad immunity where no one can touch them if they act out of line or beat up other executives. It's just a classic, you know, evil authority figure story. But again, like I mentioned about when the Bucks leaned into it, I love how they kind of lean into these like negative online perceptions that people have about them and just kind of say, okay, if that's what you think about us, then like we're just going to portray that. Danielson and FTR actually jump Okada and the Bucks before the bell rings. Darby Allin shows up. His music plays throughout as the fight is starting off. Then Matthew Jackson grabs the mic, tells them to cut the music, play our theme music. So they're fighting under the Bucks theme for a while. Then Bryan Danielson grabs the mic and says, cut that off. We're going to play the best wrestling theme. And then they play the final countdown for the first like several minutes of it. And more fighting as that song is playing. That's an iconic moment. The fans singing along. The timing of Darby hitting the coffin drop off the balcony just as the final countdown plays was just very well done. Then Matt gets back on the mic and says, this is costing us $200,000 a time we play it. Cut it off. I thought that was such a brilliant commentary on that. Jack Perry and Darby fight on the outside. Jack taking a cold plunge at one point. Back in the arena, the Bucks accidentally hit the 15% on Okada. Back outside, vehicular manslaughter mayhaps. Jack crashing his custom scapegoat bust into this big pile of pallets, presumably with Darby amongst all that. But then a couple of minutes later, Darby just shows up in the arena, not dead yet. The Bucks powerbomb him onto some chairs. Then they put him on their stage elevator and Darby slowly descends away. I love that. They fight on the poker chips. There's a TK driver on the chips to Bryan Danielson. At one point, Nicholas is like thrown into the LED board on stage with the slot machine on it. I think there's a big missed opportunity where they could have thrown him into it and then they just like play something where it's like, oh, it causes the reels to spin and then it stops on like cherry, bark. Ah, fuck. Jack Perry's still soaking wet as he makes his way back into the building. He has apprehended Tony Khan from the go position and suddenly Darby on stage with the flamethrower. Perry and TK come out. Darby setting Jack on fire. The Bucks have to extinguish him. Holy shit. Back in the ring, Darby laid out and the Bucks call down for a wench from the rafters. They could pin him at this point. They're holding him down and everything, but like, no, we're just gonna tie his legs together. Then Dash gets dinked with an exploding chair. Okada hits a Rainmaker on Cash with a thumbtack bedazzled sleeve. Then the Bucks get out their new Reebok pumps with the thumbtacks on the soles, thumbtacks sold separately. Darby is now lifted up and upside down by the ankles. Pump it up, double super kick into an upside down Darbs. Danielson comes back in and goes on this big run on the Bucks while Darby just hangs upside down forever. There's a big please help Darby chant. Then there's this moment where Bryan kind of like reaches up to Darby's hands and everything. everything, but that sets him up for Jack Perry to come in, hits the Busaiku knee to the dome, and gets the cover for the win. I give it 4 stars out of 5. This was a very entertaining, wild way to end the show, and definitely lived up to what Justin Roberts described as the shit show when things started off here. Maybe not the greatest Anarchy in the Arena match in the world, but they certainly had a good mix of like the comedy with the music. You had the drama and the holy shit moments. You had brawling. You had wrestles. You had a big gumbo in this thing here. I think, give them all credit for the stunts they pulled off in this thing. Jack Perry, it's always crazy when you're playing with fire, even if you're doing it really safe. And by the way, that was kind of refreshing in this fight here to see a bunch of spots and kind of holy shit moments where it's like at another time you might see them do spots like this and something will happen where it makes it reveal, oh, how fake this is or how planned or whatever this is. But there was really none of that in this matchup here, where you didn't really see much of like, what's going on behind the curtain. You don't see like the padding or whatever, the figurative padding, the things to make you want to pick apart stuff like this. And so kudos to them for doing that. I actually got the feeling that when Eddie Kingston watched this match and saw Jack Perry on fire, that a single tear rolled down his eye and said, "It should have been me, partner." My grade for Double or Nothing 2024 is an A-. This year's edition was much improved from last year's Double or Nothing. I think the match quality was better, the moments were more memorable and more frequent. Sure, considerably longer than Backlash and King and Queen of the Ring. It's not the 5-match format, and this crowd was certainly no Lyon, France, but I think that the action and the moments definitely made up for it and kind of made that time go by faster. A little too much interference for my blood on this show, especially considering, how much AEW used to pride itself on having matches with no interference. And so kind of sad to see that, but I think that what really made this show go over the top for me were all the returns we got, the returning talent, the returning music, the returning storylines. Like, all those moments for me kept the blood pumping, and I think that's why this show for me is such a strong one. AEW typically does kill it with pay-per-views. Their TV, not always the most cohesive in the world, but I think their pay-per-views almost always deliver, and this was certainly another example of that. But what did you think about Double or Nothing this weekend, folks? I want to hear about it in the comments section below. Favorite matches, moments, what have you. Also, not to toot my own horn too much, but I just want to say that except for the Copeland Black match on Sunday, I got every match prediction correct between Double or Nothing and King and Queen of the Ring for this weekend. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. Anyway, folks, stay tuned for later this week, the conclusion of You Can't See May, with my review of Extreme Rules 2012, the return of Brock Lesnar. But until then, folks, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.